things, but we are just only have a hope.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us. We're tracking more news from the Middle East. We're now learning that 9 more United Nations personnel have been detained by Yemen's Houthi authorities, bringing the total number of arbitrarily held UN staff to 53 since 2021. This is the largest act of aggression against UN officials since the Houthis raided UN premises in Sana'a in August and detained at least 18 UN staff following an Israeli strike that killed the Prime Minister of the Houthi-run government and several other senior ministers. Now, Houthi officials have stated that the UN personnel's legal immunities should not shield espionage activities. They've accused the organization of bias and has condemned what they call legal measures against spy cells while failing to denounce the Israeli attack. Now, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has strongly condemned the arbitrary detentions, calling for the release of all those who have been detained. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Ali Mohammed Abushbak. As I mentioned earlier, this is not the first time that the Houthis have detained United Nations personnel. There have been 53 such UN staff that have been detained since 2021. Earlier in August, in fact, the office was stormed in Sana'a and Hodeidah as well. What do you think are the implications of this, especially on peace efforts in Yemen?
First of all, this action is not acceptable either in Yemen or in any area in this world, especially also in Middle East. This is violating the human rights act. Work, and they are limited the United Nations action or active on the ground. United Nations is not going to spy, and it has no spy action on the ground. It's a it's a neutral between the conflict area. In conflict area, it's not taking part with one side or other side. Here, Houthi, it's not worth mentioning that Houthi is not a government, despite that it's not recognized by Arab area or by also international community. It's considered as a militia and backed by Iran and has their own ideology. So the thing is also here, escalated the situation. Houthi is not acting with a principle and with a social responsibility with regard to detaining the United function in Sana'a. This is not acceptable, and that's will limited the role of United Nations for development the community in Yemen. Especially, we are talking about how much Yemen suffering from the economic crisis and about the power crisis. There is a several of case in Yemen, so that's limited their action on the ground. Houthi should be accept the fact that United Nations is neutral in conflict and should enhance their role. But also here we consider that Houthi taking they are taking the orders from Iran after the Iran disbelief on the international community, so it's acting like a militia. This also their action or their aggression. They become more aggressive after the Israelis bombardment and killed their prime minister in during the confrontation and during the escalation of violence with Israel. I hope these things will not happen again, and I guess Houthi will understand and realize the role of United Nations in Yemen. Especially, they are neutral bodies, and they are also developing the community, helping the community for development and for education, for several things that Yemen need. Some people some organization to support them and help them. But as I mentioned, Houthi is not acting like a government or a state with a diplomatic responsibility. It's acting like a militia, and this is unfortunate. We hope this Yemen case will solve very soon, but there is no atmosphere for solving the issue in Yemen, and there is no prospect to reach out to a solution in Yemen.
Indeed, and at the same time, we're seeing tensions between the Houthis and Israel also escalating. We've witnessed a series of missile attacks by either side, drone strikes by either side, escalating over the last couple of months. Now, if this persists, could this then complicate broader regional peace efforts in the Middle East at large?
In my opinion, Houthi and Israel's confrontation and fighting will stop the time when Israel stopped the war in Gaza. And Houthi was very clear in this point. He said they are supporting Gaza. They are also when they are. There is a statement for the spokesman of Houthi. He said. Our weapon, it's Hamas weapon as well. If Hamas is going to disarm and lie down its weapon and leave the weapon for the anybody, either to Palestinian body or Arabic bodies who's collecting the weapon. Houthi said our weapon, it's yours weapon for Hamas. So Houthi is very clear in this point. Once the day when Hamas, Israel and the peace will be in Gaza, they will stop the war the attack against Israel. And also we have seen there is any confrontation was before the 7th of October 2023 between Houthi and Israel. Maybe there was a war tension between Israel and Yemen, but also it was the last arena that Israel expect that Houthi is going to attack Israel, because it's a far, and Houthi has a conflict with Saudi Arabia, and Israel didn't expected that. But during the war with Gaza and the Israelis' violation on the ground, so Houthi backed Hamas and the Palestinian in Gaza, because they are also the significant supporter or significant resources for them is Iran, and they are supporting them. Hezbollah took the hard lesson after assassinated Hassan Nasrallah and left the fighting and the battlefield very early after the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, and damaged and demolished its weapon military ability. But in Hezbollah, in Ansarullah Houthi, the things is very different. Israel has no information, has no intelligence service on the ground in Yemen, so that's make it more difficult for Israel. In my opinion, that will happen, the peace will happen, and the we can't say it ceasefire because they are not in direct confrontation between Houthi and Israel, but I guess that peace will happen once the day when the peace in Gaza will apply, and that will stop the war in Gaza. Ansarullah al-Houthi will stop this attack against Israel and will stop this kind of attack to Israel.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking our time, joining us and sharing your analysis. Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting focus away from the Middle East towards what's happening in Argentina. Now, in Argentina, supporters and opponents of President Javier Milei clashed outside an arena during the launch of his new book. Police intervened as tensions rose between the two sides, with clashes breaking out near the venue. Demonstrators have accused Milei of deepening the country's economic hardship, while his supporters have hailed him as a reformer, freeing the country from decades of political decay. Now, this confrontation reflects growing divisions over Milei's sweeping economic reforms and his combative political style. Listen in to what some of the protesters have had to say.
La casta se terminó. Queremos un país decente, basta de corrupción y con libertad. Gente que trabaje, gente que no mendigue, gente que no viva echado cuando el país sale a laburar.
Entonces nosotros estamos presentes para apoyarlos. A los cristianos les digo, esta es una elección para la parte interior. Es fundamental que apoyemos nosotros los cristianos por la familia, por el no nacido, por la unidad.
Sí, y estoy ganando 300.000 pesos. ¿Y qué más te puedo decir? Si yo no me puedo ir a un cine, me vengo acá a protestar, ¿me entendés? Aparte, esta gente nos está dejando en la...
Shifting focus to Southeast Asia, torrential rains triggered by Typhoon Matmo flooded parts of Hanoi, the latest series of deluges that have inundated the Vietnamese capital over the past month. as a run of storms has swept across the country's northern regions. A heavy downpour flooded major roads, leaving motorbikes and cars stranded and forcing residents to wade through calf-deep water. Inner city districts have been particularly affected, with drainage struggling to handle the volume of rain. Several schools in the Vietnamese capital closed or shifted online. Meanwhile, several flights from and to Noi Bai International Airport have been delayed or rescheduled. So now some locals have reacted to the situation. Let's listen into what they had to say.
Gần như các trường học đã chủ động sáng sớm đã thông báo cho phụ huynh là cho con ở nhà học trực tuyến. Còn lại các công ty thì đa phần đều thông báo cho người lao động ngay trong đêm qua hoặc là sáng sớm nay cho người lao động làm online ở nhà.
Cứ trận mưa to là ngập thôi. Như hôm nay là trận mưa là to nhất đấy, ngập nhất đấy. Bởi vì mọi hôm ấy, nước nó chỉ đến bậc 2 thôi này, mà hôm nay nước nó gần đến mép nhà trên. Nói trận mưa kinh khủng, may nó mưa ngắn đấy. Nhưng mà mưa thêm tầm này chắc là ngập hết Mỹ Đình rồi.
Alright viewers, you've heard what some of the residents of Hanoi have had to say. They're standing in calf deep in waters that have now flooded their streets. These rains have been triggered by Typhoon Matmo. They've flooded parts of Hanoi, and this is the latest in a series of deluges that have inundated the Vietnamese capital over the past month. We've seen a run of storms sweep across the country's northern regions. With us on the broadcast is Desmond Majikudunmi, environmentalist joining us from Lagos in Nigeria. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Interestingly, Typhoon Matmo is the 21st storm in the 2025 Pacific typhoon season. We've earlier seen Boaloy and Ragasa also wreak havoc in Southeast Asia. In your assessment, the fact that this is the 21st such storm, severe cyclonic storm, is this an alarming signal?
This is indeed an extremely alarming signal because it's gone way over the expected average of typhoons in this region. And not only that, these are particularly vigorous, they're strong typhoons. And it's not over. The season is still well into it's just reaching its peak. So there's more to come. Very alarming. It's a signal that global warming is activating processes that were anticipated many, many years ago because of the extra invigoration to the heat in the atmosphere, the invigoration that it causes. This is just a classic symptom. It's a wake-up call from Mother Nature that, we need to stop making it worse. We were warned decades ago that this would happen. And what has actually happened is that it's occurring earlier than anticipated by the scientists. So we got to do the right thing with nature, respect nature, love nature, and she'll love us back. But you hit your Mother Nature, she's going to hit you right back. It's the law of karma.
Indeed, as you put it, it is a wake-up call for people across the world. And considering this, what in your assessment should then governments do? How must the world come together in order to combat this changing climate that is now wreaking havoc, destroying lives? In fact, what must be done to mitigate what we're seeing?
This is an excellent question and observation. The reality is that we are pouring far too much quantity of what they call heat-trapping gases. This is part of the system that makes this particular planet Earth the only livable one we've been able to observe in millions of planets around, because it has a warm but average temperature, cold in some areas, hot in other areas. But we're pumping this pollution into the atmosphere. So we must reduce the pollution instead of increase it. And the irony is, 10 years ago, the whole world got together. They get together every year and they signed a treaty that we're going to reduce the pollution. Till today, it has never been so high. So we need to do that. We need to come together, and wonderful organizations like yours that are linking up the world with this vital information are playing a very, very important role. We're on the edge of triggering off catastrophic irreversible consequences. We haven't reached there yet, and by the grace of the Almighty, we will not reach there because we'll do the right thing, protect nature, stop the pollution, plant hundreds and hundreds of millions of trees to absorb the pollution that's already there, and will indeed make this world a better place.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Meanwhile, viewers, we're tracking more developments, this time from Indonesia. The search for victims of last week's school collapse in eastern Java, Sidoarjo, has now ended, with the death toll rising to 67. The multi-story Islamic boarding school in Java collapsed on 29 September as more than 170 students gathered for afternoon prayers. The head of the National Search and Rescue Agency, Mohammad Sayafi, confirmed that the search and rescue operation has concluded. Of the 171 students involved, 67 have tragically lost their lives. Meanwhile, 104 have survived. Up until now, only 17 bodies have been identified. Meanwhile, rescuers cleared all rubble and have stated that it is highly unlikely that any additional victims remain in the debris. Investigators are examining the cause, with initial indications pointing to substandard construction. Here's what the director of the rescue agency had to say.
Sekarang di area tersebut sudah rata dengan tanah dan sangat kecil kemungkinan masih ada jenazah di sini.